Okay, have a few highlighters. Ready to go. Okay? I'll just say at the top of this page, borrowing, owing. Okay, so that's the big theme here. Now we're gonna look into what if we get money from the bank, like it reverses. Instead of you investing to save, you're getting money to buy something, you slowly have to pay them back. It is technically their investment. Did you ever think about it that way? If they give you a loan, it's their investment. They're like, hey, I'm gonna give you some money. You're gonna pay me back more than what I gave you. That's how banks make money. They literally take a bunch of people's savings and they give it to other people. They borrow it, and hopefully they all pay it back so that they can give it back to their customers that were saving money, right? And they obviously make more than what they pay you, otherwise they wouldn't be in business. So a couple of terms when it comes to, just so you know, loans are, I think everybody's familiar with a loan. It's like credit, you borrow money. Do you know what a mortgage is? Yeah, what is it? Money for a house, money towards real estate. It's still borrowing money. It works exactly the same way. The only difference is for mortgages, they allow you to pay it back in much longer time frames. So 20, 25 years, 30 years. You can't do that with a car. 5 years max if it's a used car. 7 years, 8 years tops if it's brand new, right? So that's the only difference, I would say. And mortgages is towards real estate, right? What happens to the value of real estate in general? It goes up. It appreciates. Loans, you use it usually to buy something that depreciates. Like a car, it will lose its value. By the time you're done paying off your car is probably worth less than half of what it was when you bought it. That's a sad reality, right? Mortgages, when you're done paying it off, whoa, I don't owe anything, and now my house is worth double or triple than what I bought it for, right? So those are a few differences there. Credit cards are basically loans as well. You can use credit cards to buy stuff, but then now you owe it, you got to pay it back, okay? But the thing is with credit cards, the interest rate is so much higher than getting a loan from the bank. So we're going to talk about that. A few things. When you want to get a loan, you need a collateral. You need assets, right? Assets that are held in security against the repayment of a loan. So the bank will ask you, what do you own? Oh, you have a car? Okay. So if you don't pay back your loan, they'll come after your car. Okay, they'll take it. Mortgage. A mortgage is usually for the purchase of real estate. Okay, real estate goes for mortgages, and the house itself is the collateral, right? If you don't pay it off, guess what? They're going to come after your house and they get their money back that way. The majority of commercial loans are compound interest loans. I would say all of the ones we're going to deal with are compound. A loan can involve a single payment. Okay, so for loans, sometimes you just have a single payment at the end of the term. Or, I'm going to switch colors, you could have, which is most of the cases, are smaller regular payments as the loan progresses. Okay? With each payment period, the interest charge decreases. Just so you know, with each payment period, the interest charge decreases while the principal paid increases. We'll talk more about that later. This occurs because each payment decreases the balance of the loan, so the interest on the remainder will be less on the next payment. Since the payments stay the same, the payments usually stay the same, there'll be less interest owing and more will go towards paying off the balance of the loan. When purchasing a car or a house, a down payment is usually paid in cash. I will highlight this a different color because down payments, we need to make sure we subtract them before we use TVM. Okay, so a down payment, this is my original orange. Down payment usually must be paid in cash, and the loan is for the remaining amount. Okay? You aren't allowed to get a loan to cover the down payment. So this is the one I want you to highlight. Make sure you subtract your down payment from the present value. We're going to subtract the down payment before we work with it. Credit cards are technically loans. The credit card gives you money, right? And you have to pay it back. We're not going to highlight anything there. Savings account make the least amount of interest. Mortgages charge even more interest than savings accounts, and credit cards charge the highest rate of interest. When using the TVM solver, here's another, highlight this part. When using the TVM solver, the number of payments and the number of compounding periods are often different. Okay? Pay attention. And we already know this, N is the total number of payments, not compounding periods. When investing, you want as much interest as possible. It is the opposite when taking out a mortgage or a loan. I'll say this. Taking out a mortgage or a loan. Sorry about that. Let's bring down the camera here. Mortgage or a loan. You want to pay the lowest possible interest. And these are the things you need to have on your study sheet, at least a few of them. Interest charged on a loan will be decreased by any of the following factors. So I'm going to actually box all of these in. I would say have 2 to 3 of these on your study sheet. To reduce interest paid. If you want to reduce, if they ask you, it's like, hey, how can you pay less interest? Any of these 6 bullets will get you there. All right? So if you shop for a lower interest rate, if the compounding frequency is decreased, do you remember me saying the more compounding periods, the better? When it comes to saving, when it comes to loans, it's the opposite, right? Compounding frequency, you want it to be lower. Regular payments are made. So that's better than not making any payments and just waiting for the end to pay it all off. That's what I mean there. So this would only apply to a case where there aren't regular payments being made. You can also say payment value increases. So you can tell your bank, hey, you know how I'm making $500 a month payment? I want it to be $600. Change it. They'll do it. The payment frequency is increased. What does that mean? More often. Okay? Pay more often. That's what I will say. That's the translation, more often. So instead of making monthly payments, making bi-weekly payments is better. You'll pay it off faster. Okay? The term is decreased. So I will say reduce term. Right? Example, 5 years versus 7 years. Can you see that? Sorry. So if the question ever asks is like, hey, what can Trina do to pay less interest? It's like, oh, she's got a 7-year loan, go to 5. Boom, you're done. Okay, that's our 1 marker right there. Lease, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about leasing right now, but leasing is essentially mostly for vehicles. A vehicle lease is the most common. Even though you can lease a computer, did you know that most printers in this division, if the big printers we have, those are all leased. So when they have a 2 or 3 year lease, the lease is over, we get rid of them, we get brand new ones, we lease it again for a couple of years. That way we don't have to worry about old machines breaking down all the time. Okay? So leasing is you're renting for a term. More about that later. Equity, this one is huge. Equity can make buying a house, the equity before this equity, sorry, over here, this one. Equity is the difference between the value of an item and the amount still owing. So, for example, if a $25,000 down payment is made on $230,000, $205,000 is still owing, and $25,000 is the equity on the house. More about that later. Appreciation, I'll ask you to highlight that. The value of the asset increases over time. Depreciation, let's use a different color for that one. The value of the asset decreases over time. So a car and so forth. At this point, I don't think I'll give you any more formulas because I want to get going with a TVM solver first. Let's go to 64. I'll just talk about those briefly. So the functions, sum of interest, start and end, it's still, in this case, instead of figuring out the amount of interest you've earned, it will say the amount of interest you've paid after n number of payments. So if you want to end, right, it has to have like an end, like a start and an end. So if it asks for n number of payments, to figure out n, you got to go years times PY just like before. So if it asks you how much interest has this loan paid in 3 years, to figure out what number goes in there, you go 3 times PY and you get that, you figure out that number there. This one is a new one, principal. 1 to n is the same as the sum of interest. The amount of loan, present value that has been paid back after n number of payments. Balance n, it's the amount of loan that is still owing after n number of payments. Present value, in a sense, you will know by adding the principal that you've paid off plus the balance. And this one I don't really need you to know. Just make sure you have these three. These are important. That you figure out how much interest you've paid, how much principal you've paid off, and how much you owe on your loan at any given time. Obviously, at the very end, that should be 0, but that is not necessarily always true. Cost of the loan. If it ever talks about costs of the loan is the interest charged over the term of the loan, okay? That is the cost of borrowing. Interest on the loan, if you want to figure out how much interest you've paid, make sure you highlight this as well. So I'm going to box in the top here. Oops, sorry. My bad. And this one right here, this one is important as well, total interest earned. Can I just give you a heads up right now? It's a little overwhelming. I'm giving you a 1-pager when we're done loans. I'm going to give you a 1-pager that summarizes investing and loans. We're going to have to write that down, okay? Right now it's a little messy. I'm not too proud of this one. I will help you out with that. So for now, try to add to your study sheet, and then you might have to adjust it once I do the review. Equity of a house is the market value you sold for minus the balance remaining at that point. Okay, so this is just a concept. Appreciation is the market value, right? If you want to know what the market value is you take the initial value times 1 plus the rate to the power of years. Make sure you have that one down. Okay, so I'm going to actually just make sure. Depreciation is the initial value times 1 minus the rate to the power of years. These ones you need to add to your study sheet for sure. Okay, these ones I will not have on that review that I study sheet. Okay. And if you can tell, this is an exponential function. Both of these are exponential. Depreciation you subtract, appreciation you add. That's the important thing, and then you go to the power of years. This one right here, equity, is very, very important. Okay, so make sure you put a bunch of stars to figure out how much equity you have in the house. You really want to go with initial value, right? It will normally go up, not always, to the power of years. So this is how much your house is worth at any given time in the future, minus the balance owing at that point. So you're going to subtract, okay? And that's how we're going to find our equity in the house. Let's jump into an example. That diagram that I show you down there, bottom of this page, I'm going to use that again later on. Right now it might be too much for you to handle. So let's just go and dive into an example of using a TVM solver. I'm going to start with the rarest, the least common example. But just in case that ever shows up, it has shown up before. So you want to be prepared for that. And I tell you already, there are no payments happening here, no regular payments. Trina's employer loaned her $10,000 at an interest rate, a fixed interest rate of 6% compounded annually to pay for textbooks and tuition. The loan is to be repaid in a single payment at the end of the 5 years. How much will Trina need to pay her employer at maturity? Okay, so let's do this. A, NI, PV, PMT, future value, PY, CY. Compounding periods first. This is compounded what? Annually. Right, it says it right here, compounded annually. So that means that there's only one compounding period per year. Are there any regular payments being made on a regular basis? The answer is no. So that makes payment 0, which means what about these two? They're going to be the same. Okay. If you can make PMT 0, make sure these are the same. Future value is what we're going to figure out. Present value is the $10,000 loan. Oop, is it positive or negative? It's positive, it's coming to you. When you get a loan, the PV is positive, it's coming to you. Okay? The bank's like, here you go spend it, do whatever you want, right? Interest is 6%. N is always a bit tricky, but really you just need to figure out the years. So it's 5 years times whatever PY is. So that should be 5. And let's go solve for future value. So when there's a weird question with no payments, it does happen sometimes. It does happen where some credit cards give you promotions like, hey, transfer all of your debt onto our credit card, and then there'll be a small interest. You just have to pay us in like a year. You have to pay us back plus interest. So future value, alpha, enter, that's going to be 382.26. Does it make sense for it to be negative? Yes, because at that point, you have to give it back to the person that borrowed you the money. So make sure you put a dollar sign in front of it. The negative is not necessary here. And so this is it. This answers A. At maturity, when this loan is done, that's how much you're going to have to pay back. How much did that loan cost her? Asking for interest. For interest paid. We can use this one. You want the entire amount, right? All of the interest paid. So then it's naturally just going to be 1 followed by whatever n is, 5, right? So you want the entire, the interest paid over the entire loan. If you do that, just got to make sure you quit the TVM solver screen. If you don't quit it, it's going to paste it into your TVM solver. It's going to make it all a big mess. So quit, right? You go apps. No, not apps. Is it apps? Yeah, apps. Finance. Are you okay, Mr. Erickson? You're supposed to know this stuff. 3,382.26 cents. Does that make sense? It does, right? You can actually clearly see you borrow 10,000, you pay back 13,000, and so the 3,000 is your interest. So that's why I picked these numbers, to make it very obvious. But here's another one. Or if you want to use the formula, I had a nice formula that I made, and there it is. I have it. Interest, you can use this one. Interest paid is future value minus present value minus n times payment. Future value is 13,382. Present value is 10,000. Minus 5 payments. What is my payment? PMT is 0, right? So this whole thing goes to 0. So it's essentially just subtracting the future value and the present value. So that's 3,382 and 26 cents. I forgot the 26 in here. Slow down. So regardless of how you did it, it's 3,382 and 26 cents. C. Hopefully you have room for C. What would you expect to happen to the cost of the loan if the interest was compounded monthly? It would go up, right? The cost of borrowing would go up. The interest paid would increase. Okay? Since monthly is more than annually. That's it. Okay. Let's try the next one here. So again, I can ask you for anything. I can ask you for what payment does that person need to make, and so forth. So these are a lot of what if will come your way. So let's try this one here. Example 2. This one is more common, right? Lars borrowed $12,000 from a bank at 5% compounded monthly to buy a new jet ski. Lars negotiated loan payments of $350 at the end of each month until the loan is paid off. How long will it take Lars to pay off the loan? Can I add something here, please? I think just to get the down payment out of the way, because a lot of questions have a down payment. Assume a $2,000 down payment. I know I just added this. So let's go ahead and fill in our TDM solver. Remember, this is loans here. So let's do A first. NIPV let's fill us in bottom up. Compounded monthly, so 12. Before you fill this in, maybe let's go figure out what PMT is. Payments are $350 at the end of each month, correct? That has to be negative, because guess what? You're making the payments to the bank. As soon as there are payments, you got to ask how often do they happen. Let's go over here. It says 350 at the end of each month. So it's also monthly. It just happens to be the case. You always have to read carefully. On my ACs, I make sure quite often they're not the same, just so you don't think that it's always the same. When it's a loan, future value is going to be 0 if you're making regular payments. You want this to be 0, right? Paid off. So the future value, you want it to be 0. Present value is what you're borrowing. Okay, so watch this. 12,000 minus the 2,000. I'm going to use a red pen for the minus 2,000. So you got to take away the down payment every time. Okay. So that makes PV technically 10,000. You're only borrowing 10,000. The 2,000 you took care of, you need an additional 10. That's what you're borrowing from the bank. Okay? Now, the interest rate is 5% even. And the only thing that's going to give me time, like if it says how long will it take, is found in here. Okay? So let's calculate that. Apps. I actually have to redo this because of the down payment. My key is different now. So I'm in the same boat as you. 5, 10,000, negative 350, 0, 12, and 12. I'm going to N, and I'm going to go alpha, enter, and I'm writing this down. 30.4837. 4 decimals is good enough. I want to explain this answer. This is the number of payments you've made. Okay, guys? What were my payments? How often did I make payments? I made monthly payments, correct? So to pay this off, it's going to take you 30.4837 payments. Why would I get a decimal here? I signed several loans over my lifetime. You're gonna make 30 full payments of $350, and then your last payment is gonna be smaller. So when you sign that contract, this is this ginormous stapled together thing, and they have every payment lined up there, but then your last payment is not 350, it's gonna be a little bit less. So this is basically telling you 30 payments and then some. The last payment is going to be 0.4837 times 350. Your last payment in this case would be 169.30 to like balance it out, to get it down to zero. So that's actually very normal for that to happen. Okay? So I want to make a note here. For A, we will say how long. We'll answer this in years. We know this is 30.4837 divided by whatever PY is. So that is 2.54 years. Not a problem. That's a perfect answer. If I asked you like how old will Lars be when he's done the loan, now you have to round that to a whole number. You have to add this to his age, and then that has to be a whole number. Another one is, let's add this. If question asks for number of payments, use n, okay, use n, round to whole number. So in this case, it would be 31 payments. Like it will take 31 payments to make this happen. 30 full, like for the full 350, and then another payment. But it doesn't matter. It will take 31 payments to pay this off. B. It's a little tight here, guys, so I'm going to do B right here. B. What would be the balance owing on the loan after 1 year? Remember, balance, I always tell students go years times PY. That's how you have to think of it. That's the number that goes in there. So I will go balance of 1 times 12. That is essentially balance of 12. I know there's a lot of writing for something that easy, and you might just down the road just say, no, I'm just going to go balance 12 because I know it's 12. But I need you to know how I got that. So let's do this here. What if? So this is based on what is in your TVM solver. So we're going to go apps, finance, and go to balance and put down 12. Balance only needs one entry. You will still be owing 62.14 and 2 cents. So it's kind of cool to know, right? In 3 years, I'm planning on selling this car maybe in 3 years, right? How much would I still owe, right? Or in 2 years or whatever, still owing this much. So that's the answer. C. What would be the balance owing on the final payment? Final payment is 0.4837 times 350. I'm going to highlight, like, where did I get that from? I'm going to highlight this, and I'm going to go highlight it right next to N. The last payment is going to be, right, that decimal. And I already told you what this is. This is 169.30. To be honest, I've never had a question like this on an exam, ever. but I think it's cool to know, oh, that's why there's a decimal there, okay? It's because the last payment is not a full payment, okay? D, what is the cost of the loan to Lars? Let's say if you've been awake all these days here, can you use sum of interest here? No, because n is a decimal. So that's the culprit. You can't find the total interest paid because of that, using sum of interest. So we got to use this one. Did I give you the wrong formula earlier? Give me 1 second here. Future value minus present. Give me 1 second, sorry. I want to make sure I don't give you the wrong formula. Because that would be bad, right? Minus future value, yes. It's this one. Sorry, guys. Which means we'll have to correct the other one. N. So when you go home today and your parents ask you, how was your day? You can't say we didn't do anything. It's like, Mr. Dirksen messed up a couple times, as always. N times PMT minus present value minus future value. That's what it is for loans. And so in this case, N is 30.4837 times 350 minus present value, which is 10,000, minus future value, which is 0. So this is 10,669.30 minus 10,000, and that's 669.30 cents. That's what it costs him in interest. Okay. All right, so I'm going to stop here, and I'm just going to ask you to work through pages. Let me see here. I have them following. I'm going to say for now 86. $86 to $87. There's some investing there as well, so you don't forget how to do that.